Welcome to another event of Coffee with the Bishop, and it's a time of COVID-19. It is a great day to be alive and thanking God that we're still here. My heart goes out to anyone and to all who have lost someone to this virus. I've known some people who, just in my family, on the other side of my family, who lost her mother and her sister. That was two people in one family. And as you know, I told you I have a sister that lost her mother and her aunt. This virus is very powerful, and I call it the invisible sneak up on you. So whatever you need to do, stay in, wear your mask when you go out. Please be careful. Take this seriously, because guess what? It is something happening, and if we do what we're supposed to do, we can beat this virus. I'm a firm believer in that. I don't give up. I'm your host, Bishop Kenneth L. Pyramid. I want to tell you that it's, again, a great time to be alive. And I want to bring you some good information. Today, I have a very, very special guest on. I'm excited. And I'm going to try to keep my cool. Okay, and she's an actress, an activist, and she's an author. Okay, all of that wrapped in one. And she lives in Atlanta, Georgia, or around the Atlanta, Georgia area. And she has she leads and the CEO of the Hosea Helps Incorporated. She loves to feed people. Yes, she does. She doesn't believe there should be a hungry person in the world. And her name is Mrs. Elizabeth Amala. Woo, back it up. Slow it down. Omalano.
There, there
Say
you
it.
go. Omalami.
Omalami. There you go.
Yes.
Omalami. Her father was one of the civil rights, worked with the civil rights leader, and he led things himself. He led a march in Forsyth County, and she was one of the women, the first black women in 75 years to stay in the jail. And so she has done a great deal of work. Her work is far greater than you can ever know. Just this Easter that passed, she and her helpers, I call them people that help her, they were able to feed people. They fed people. Hosea Helps fed the people during this pandemic that was going on. Again, proving that we can do something if we all work together. So I'm
Yes.
not going to hold this up any longer. I'm so glad she's on here with me joining. I want to introduce to some and present to all Mrs. Elizabeth Omanano.
Hello. Hello,
Hello.
Bishop. It doesn't really matter, does it, about the name? Because what matters is that we are here, we are alive, and we can do something to help others. And that's what matters. So actually, it's a very strange name, Omilami. My husband changed his name to an African name when he was at Morehouse. And that's how I got that name, because that's where we met. So it's so good to be here with you tonight, Bishop.
Yes, yes. Well, I wanted to leave it open for you to discuss and tell us what you do and what you're doing even now.
Well, I thought that I would read this letter. It's very short. It's a note, really. It's not a letter. That I would read this, because this says it all. It says, Mrs. Omilami, I just wanted to take a moment to write this note of thanks to you and your organization for your time, dedication, commitment, and love to the families of our communities. It has always been your choice to step out of your comfort zone to assist us who are struggling, especially during this horrible pandemic, to feed our loved ones. I live in a senior community, and a lot of my neighbors are terrified. She said, terrified and afraid to leave their homes to get food. I was able to share what I received from your food bank with my neighbors, which helped to relieve some of the stress they are experiencing. Once again, thank you, and may God continue to bless you, your family, your volunteers, and your donors for all that you do. Brenda Jones. And when I got that note, I was just realizing the true terror of it all. When they say that seniors are so very vulnerable, and we don't take care of our elders in our community the way we should. And they are, we have, I don't know how many seniors high rises in Atlanta, but we at Hosea Helps, and that's Hosea with an H as it's spelled biblically, HOSEAHELPS. We have a methodology for mass feeding that is far beyond anything I've seen anywhere. It's called Hosea on the Move. And so we take 2 or 3 24-foot trucks and we pack them with food. And then we get case managers with hot spots in their cars. And we will pull up in an apartment complex at 7 to 8 in the morning. And we will stay there all day. And by the end of that day, we have fed over 400 families. And if you say that each family averages 3 people, then that's 1,200 individuals. But here in our city, the homeless problem is also part of our work and has been for I don't know, since the organization began, because it used to be called Hosea Feed the Hungry and Homeless. So the homeless work that we do, people don't know that a lot of the homeless are living in hotels. They're living in extended stay hotels. A mother and her 3 or 4 children living in a hotel room paying $400 a week, cooking off of a hot plate, sleeping, bunking in the bed together. That's homelessness also. You're just not under the bridge. You're just not on the sidewalk or in a shelter being homeless. But 40-50% of the homeless here are working, and they're paying every dime to that hotel. So our plan has been, since we got word of this pandemic around March 10th. We got word because the needs of the people tell us what's going on. And we went from serving 25 families a day to 40 families a day overnight. And we said, my God, what has happened? Where are these people coming from? And so we're serving people in hotels. We're doing rental assistance for people in apartments. We're doing utility assistance. And we are distributing food. Usually we have a service on Easter Sunday. This year we couldn't do the service. And so we took to the streets and fed 3,187 individuals, which is about 900 families. So we've been extremely busy. I have staff members that never stayed home, that stayed at our warehouse, working ever since this horrible thing hit our city. And so, of course, we're just one of the organizations here, and it takes all of us giving out information, sharing information. I mean, our governor made the decision to open up businesses this Friday. And I'm very nervous about that because our mayor didn't even know that he had decided that. And I'm sure that she would have reacted. So we're dealing with a lot of different things here, Bishop. And it's been your prayers and your support of me over the years that has just upheld me and kept me going.
Well, I want to say this. Thank you for that. One of the things I want to say is you are a hands-on woman, and I want to make that clear to the audience that's viewing. She's just not the CEO of this company. She actually gets into the trenches with the people. She knows the people's hearts. She learned the pulse beat of her community. And I want to say to someone that's viewing, you too can learn the heartbeat of your community or the pulse of your community as you are allowing yourself to open yourself to figure out what it is that you can do that will be a blessing to your community and one another. One of the things I want to say is your father, by him working and being a part of the civil rights movement, which is very important because that's historical for especially us here in the Poconos where we are. And we're so glad
Yes.
to say thank you for all that your father has done in the past to make things better for people, as well as thanking you for what you're doing right now to bless your community. How do you feel that's made an impact on you in what you do now?
Well, I probably would be another person if I had not been born into the family of Hosea and Juanita Williams. I would be something else. I thought I was going to be an actress. And that's what I got my degree in at Hampton University. And my father was really the only civil rights leader that was a integral strategist for three of the major civil rights victories. One was the Civil Rights Act, one was the Voting Rights Act, and the third was the March on Washington after Martin Luther King was assassinated. So if you Google HOSEA, Hosea Williams, you'll see that he gave his life for the people on this planet, that they would be free, that they would have equal access to opportunity, that they would have decent education, decent housing, a proper hourly wage, all of those things that makes for equality of life. And that's how I grew up. I grew up thinking that you owed life something, that there was a requirement that you serve others, and if you didn't, it was a selfish life. So even when I was an actress, and I'm still doing some of that, I was always serving. I was always with Jose Feed the Hungry. I was always standing out on the corner when I was 6 years old asking for pennies. I was in the warehouse with the other homeless guys counting canned goods. I was answering the phone. And right before he died, he gave me these jobs to do. And I really did not know why, but he put me on the phone one day. He put me in the warehouse one day. Then he put me with the media. Then he put me out there on the streets with the giving out the food. And I think he was preparing for his death, and he passed in 2000. And I always say that the mantle fell on me like a brick, like a huge, heavy quilt, because I had no idea that I would be doing this. So his influence has made my life what it is, really.
And being that we're in this COVID-19, how do you see that things have changed within your organization or the people that you know that you're serving?
I think that inequity in our country is made more evident in pandemic and in disasters. Because even when we served during Katrina, or we went to Tennessee or Mississippi because of the floods, we fed people all over the world, Bishop. We've been to Haiti. We had been to Haiti 9 years before they even had an earthquake. Uh, we started a school in the Philippines. I think that during a disaster, you see who gets the food first. You see who gets the money first. You see who gets the testing first. You see what communities are denied access to information and services. And so it reminds you that we live in a country that is pro rich and anti poor. My father used to call it the haves and the have nots. Um, we we live in a society that almost criminalizes being poor or needy, that almost makes the person who is struggling ashamed of their situation. And so the first thing we say at Hosea Helps is there is no shame here. If you're coming here to get a food box, you already paid for this food box. Your parents worked for this food box. You don't have to be ashamed to come and get it. Clothing, you don't have to be rent assistance, utility assistance. There is no shame. And so that helps a little, but we need to realize where we live so that we're not shocked by what happens in a situation like this.
And that's very true. One of the things I want to say is, have you noticed that when you're reaching out to people or they reach back to you? Well, let me preference this by saying, since I met you a couple of years ago, one of the things I've noticed that you've always done has reached out to people. You have a big Christmas thing that's out of this world,
Mhm.
and not to mention the holiday of Thanksgiving. You really work for holidays, and then beyond the holiday, after the holiday is over, you're still there for your community and your people. And you've proven that it's not just being there for a particular holiday, but can I be there for man's sake whenever there's the need that arises? Have you noticed that in this time of the COVID-19, that you have a lot more volunteers or a lot more people are coming together to work together with you?
Absolutely. We could not have, as I said, we started March 10th and we started serving organizations. That was what was so surprising, that it wasn't individuals that were showing up at Hosea Helps here in Atlanta. It was organizations like Mary Hall Freedom House and um, the Refuge Center and the recovery centers and uh, other transitional houses and shelters that didn't have food. Uh, I had been saying for the last 4 or 5 years that access to food was going to get political. And it was very prophetic. And I am not a person that says she's a prophet by any means, but it just kept coming to me. Access to food is political. Access to food is political. And so, what we have found during this pandemic is that you can have money and not have any place to buy the food
That's right.
unless you know somebody. So, what has happened to us? We have 9,000 volunteers a year on a normal year at Hosea. We serve 31,000 people a year. And people can go to our website, number 4, HOSEA.org. That's 4hosea.org. During this pandemic, however, we have had volunteers that will come in and make food boxes with masks and gloves on, putting themselves at risk to make sure we had food for senior citizens. We have had donors like Fulton County uh, commissioners, Publix, supermarkets. I don't know if you all have Publix up in the Poconos, but we got to thank them. We got to thank the AIDS Foundation. We have to thank our donors, because without the cash coming in, we cannot buy the food because the need is so great. When you see on the news those lines of cars, where am I? There I am. Those lines of cars, that's what we have here in Atlanta. With all this money here and all this wealth, people think Atlanta is like the mecca of Black living. Well, there are two Atlantas. There is the Atlanta that has the population where they spend more than 50% of their income just on their rent. There is the Atlanta that makes $7 an hour. There is the Atlanta that pays $400 a week to live in a hotel. So there are two Atlantas. So what we really need to realize is that a woman like me, if I can do with the volunteers and the donors what we've done here, anybody listening can do this, because I'm nobody special. I just made myself available, and the poor are right in the center of God's heart. And so when you serve the poor, he provides the resources. You just make yourself available.
And that's true. I must say there are some people in Monroe County where we are who have done the same done the same thing. We have some pastors that are giving out food, and there are some churches that are giving out food, and some organizations that are giving out food, doing their best to help the during this time of the epidemic. But one of the things that I did notice, and I'm saying that we can't seem to get people motivated at times to see the importance of what it is
Mm-hmm.
to work with one another and
Mm-hmm.
to chip in any way we can to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can't support you by getting out there to work in giving out the food or volunteering, but I can send my financial support. That can help. That goes a long
Yes.
way. Like they were making a mask and they were donating gloves. But one of the things I've learned about this pandemic is that it's hit our Black community in a very strong way. And
Yeah.
for whatever the reasons are, we are not able to, where we are, they're driving to different sites to be tested. But here it is, some of the people don't drive. Some people don't have cars. And so
Yes.
some
Yes.
people don't
And
have cars and
that's
they
right.
can't get to the sites. There are seniors that can't get on their buses and get to where they need to go. And so, therefore, we're so grateful when people talk to us about what it is we need to do, what it is that's happening in our communities. And in the Black and Latino communities and the poor communities, it's a different race for them dealing with this epidemic. I will leave that in your
Mm,
hands. You can talk about it. Go ahead.
that's so powerful. That's so powerful. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because there is a lady here, and if you hear noise in the background, of course, there's no school. So, three grandchildren live with me, and they're all under 6.
Okay.
So, we all know what that means. But there's a lady here named Betsy Cowell, and I'll say her name because through her, we were able to link to the Latino American population here. And they also are afraid to come out. There's a lot of fear, Pastor, a lot of fear, Bishop, in the Black and Latino communities. Fear of the seniors, fear for the Latino Americans that they will get deported because they may not be legal, fear of the families who didn't have a lot of savings and lost their jobs. That's why our rent assistance has gone through the roof. And we give out $800 for two, we give out $1,600 for 2 months rent assistance, um, and utility assistance. I think the biggest thing I've seen in our community is the fear, but I've also seen us pull together because we realize we don't have anybody but us. There is no charging white horse coming from Washington to save us. God is our savior. And when we come together and pray as a group and send up those requests, his word does not return void. He said, if my people who are called by my name will turn from their wicked ways, pray, I will heal the land. And I know that's not exactly what it is, but all we have is each other. So you didn't know your neighbor. Now you need to get to know your neighbor, because the lady down the street might be hungry and just not be saying so. When you buy a can of food for yourself, buy one for someone else. When you get a quart of milk, just walk across the street and say, hey, I brought you a quart of milk. I brought you some toilet tissue, which is gold these days. I brought you. So ask yourself every day, who can I serve? Who can I give something to? Because that's what's going to last. That's why we're still here talking about Hosea Williams all these 25 years after his death, because what you do for others, that's what's going to last, and everything else will perish. And we need each other right now more than ever.
And that we do. One of the things I keep saying all the time is that I do understand that we need to get our economics back, economics get strong again in our communities, all of those things, but I always say at what price? And to the smaller business person, I would say the smaller one, the one that owns a pizza shop, the one that owns the Jamali African foods, those that didn't get the money, didn't get that chance to get the money at all. I don't think it ran out, or however they said it, but they didn't get it. I understand that we have to find a way to help them and to keep them going, because they're the ones that are
Yes.
truly suffering in those areas. But I don't understand sometimes when I look at how everything is opening up and we're just going to go on like it's business as usual, when it's not business as usual. Lives are
No.
at stake. When you have a virus that can take out 3 people within hours of each other, we're talking about people who are in the hospital and their daughter may be at home and they lose their mother, their father, and a sister in one breath. Just to get back to call ourselves, just to get everything booming, we need to take the time to really shut down and pull back and make it for the long haul instead of going back in
Yes.
for the shortness of it, and we may
Thank
find
you.
ourselves in double trouble later. How do you feel about that?
Thank you. That is so prophetic, because we have a lady here who never left her house, and she never let anybody in, and she gets COVID and dies. So how do you explain that? We don't know how this thing travels and manifests. And they're thinking that it may have come in on her mail, that you have to spray your mail when you get it. You have to spray packages. You go outside and play with your children. You have to clean them off when they come back in. So, you know, and I don't want this to cause anybody to lose faith in God, because, I've lost a lot of people in my family. I lost a younger brother, 2 younger brothers. I lost my mother and my father in 2000. My mother was one of the women of the movement that you never hear about in the civil rights movement. You never hear that the women kept it all together for the men. And there never would have been a Martin Luther King had there not been a Coretta Scott King. Never would have been a Ralph Abernathy without a Juanita Abernathy. Never would have been a Hosea Williams without a Juanita Williams. These women that gave their lives, all of this loss. And I prayed for all of those people to live. But God decided to bring them to Him. So let us not allow this pandemic to shake our faith, but only to cause us not to question. the will of God for so many people. It's very hard. There are no answers, but we know that God is good. And that is what keeps me going when the truck broke down and we couldn't get the food out, when we ran out of dry goods like we did a few weeks ago, when the juice was backdated and they gave it to us anyway. I'm like, Lord, I know you know what we're trying to do. Please help us. Help us feed these people. Help us give out the rent assistance. I'm a small company. You know, the big nonprofits, they get the big money, but it doesn't always trickle down to uh, um, companies my size. And so I depend on the Lord completely for sustaining Hosea Feed the Hungry and Homeless, or Hosea Helps. And he's never let us down. You talk about what we do on Christmas. Well, we're open every week, every day, all year long, except for Monday and Sunday. But on the holidays, we have what we call festivals of service. And these festivals offer the homeless and anybody that wants to come. Loneliness is a big problem in our community. They get clothing, they get a haircut, they get their hair done, they see a doctor from the Morehouse School of Medicine. We home deliver 22,000 meals a year. They will get also a hot shower, a full day of ministry coming forth from the stage, gospel music coming forth. My pastor, Woodrow Walker, at Cross Culture Church here, is the one who told me that if we're not offering Jesus at these events, we're serving from dirty plates. So we had to change the music. We had to change the whole focus of the event to be a spiritual event, to speak to the spirit of men and women that came. And now we're having whole families, homeless families, come. So please hold on to your faith. Don't let this cause you to think that God doesn't love us, because that is a lie from the pit of hell.
I know that to be true. I have another question. Um, if your father was here today, how do you think, or what do you think he would say, and how do you think he would handle dealing with
Oh
the
my
people at this
God.
time to help them?
Well, mm, Hosea Williams was Martin Luther King's agitator. So you know how when you put your clothes in the washing machine, they have to get agitated to be clean. He led the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge with John Lewis. John Lewis was just a kid then, Congressman Lewis, and keep him in your prayers.
Yes.
But he would be angry. He would be on the news crying out, where's the testing in the Black community? I don't even know where to go get tested right now. Where's the money? How can you spend however billions of dollars in 2 weeks and know the small businesses don't get the money? He would be furious, because when you have been in the civil rights movement, well, he started working for Martin Luther King in 1965. Dr. King hired him out of Savannah after he was the man singly most responsible for integration in the Southeast, according to Martin Luther King. Hired him and brought him to Atlanta. So you've been working in civil rights since, I know, 1951. And here you are today, and the system is still as strong as ever against the poor, against the needy, against the people of color. So you would think something had changed. So I know that he would be furious, and we have to get furious. Just because we're sitting in our houses with our feet up and we can do Uber Eats or Grab Hub or whatever it is. We have to know that 2 blocks down the road is a senior citizen that on a loaf of bread. We have to know that how are these children going to go back to school and they haven't eaten a nutritious meal all summer because summer is coming. And our no summer hunger program is a beast. It's difficult to implement and it's hard to get the product. And now we got this pandemic on top of it. So we need to get holy anger. We need to get fierce. We need women. We are warriors. We need to make sure that you not just thinking about your own children, but your sister's children and your other sister's children, your sister that's not your blood sister. How are her children doing? So this is a time for us to learn what Dr. King meant by the beloved community, and not just the words, but